The glass tower of Meridian Tech Solutions gleamed in the Seattle morning sun. 23 floors of cutting-edge engineering, architectural innovation, and Silicon Valley ambition. The building had won awards: Most Innovative Workspace Design 2019, Green Building of the Year, Architectural Excellence in Technology Spaces. Carmen Reyes pushed her cleaning cart through the executive floor at 6:47 a.m., moving silently past the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of Elliott Bay. At 48, she'd perfected the art of invisibility, the way housekeepers learn to exist in spaces without disturbing the important people who occupied them. She wore the standard gray uniform of Apex Cleaning Services. Her hands, roughened by years of industrial cleaners, moved with automatic efficiency as she emptied trash bins and wiped down surfaces. Her name tag read simply, Carmen, Custodial. What it didn't say: Carmen held a master's degree in structural engineering from Universidad Nacional de Colombia. What it didn't say: she'd designed earthquake-resistant buildings in Bogotá before immigrating to the United States 15 years ago. What it didn't say: the very building she cleaned had been designed using principles she'd pioneered in her academic research. In the main conference room, CEO Marcus Webb was in crisis mode. His voice carried through the glass walls as Carmen worked nearby. The Beijing expansion is falling apart. Marcus barked into his phone. The structural engineers say the design won't meet Chinese seismic codes. We're 6 weeks from groundbreaking and suddenly the entire foundation design is inadequate. Carmen's hands paused mid-wipe. Seismic codes. Foundation design. She knew those words like old friends. Marcus continued pacing. I don't care what it costs. Get me structural engineers who know seismic design. Now, we have investors flying in from Shanghai next week expecting to see final plans. He slammed his phone down as his chief technology officer, David Park, entered with a tablet. Marcus, I've contacted every major structural firm on the West Coast. The ones who specialize in international seismic design are booked 6 months out. Nobody can turn around a redesign in 6 weeks. Then find somebody who can. This Beijing project is our expansion into Asian markets. If we can't deliver, we lose the contract. I know. David scrolled through his tablet. There's one more option. Professor Elena Vega at University of Washington. She's published extensively on seismic design adaptation for varying soil conditions. But she's academic, not corporate. Might not be interested. Get her interested. Offer whatever it takes. As they talked, Carmen continued cleaning, her ears cataloging every technical detail. The Beijing project. Seismic Zone 8. Problematic soil composition. Foundation resonance issues. She knew exactly what the problem was. She'd solved similar challenges in Bogotá's earthquake-prone terrain. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter Sophia, a junior at Seattle University. Mom, tuition payment is due Friday. Do we have enough? Carmen's stomach tightened. Between her cleaning jobs and her night shifts translating technical documents under the table, she was still $800 short. Sophia's education was everything. The reason Carmen had left Colombia, the reason she worked 3 jobs, the reason she endured being invisible. She texted back, "Don't worry, Mija. I'll handle it." But she had no idea how. As Marcus and David left the conference room still arguing about their engineering crisis, Carmen gathered her supplies. She glanced at the architectural drawings they'd left scattered on the table, preliminary designs for the Beijing Tower, covered in red markup showing structural failures. One look told her everything. The foundation design was treating Beijing's soil like Seattle's bedrock. Completely wrong approach. The load distribution was inadequate for seismic Zone 8 requirements. The resonance calculations didn't account for the building's height-to-base ratio in softer soil. She could fix this in her sleep. But she was a janitor. Who would listen to a janitor? Carmen pushed her cart toward the elevator, her mind already solving equations that Meridian's expensive consultants had gotten wrong. The quiet thunder of her expertise rumbled beneath the surface, unheard by everyone who passed her without a second glance. In her small apartment that evening, Carmen sat at her kitchen table covered with technical documents. She'd been working on a research paper about adaptive seismic design, unpublished work she'd been developing for 3 years. Next to her laptop, Sophia's tuition bill stared accusingly. "Mom, you should submit your paper to that engineering journal," Sophia said, bringing Carmen tea. "Dr. Martinez at my university says your work is publishable." "With what credentials?" Carmen replied in Spanish. "My Colombian degrees mean nothing here. The licensing board won't recognize my education without thousands of dollars in evaluation fees and courses I can't afford. But you're brilliant. Your research is worthless without American credentials." Carmen's voice was tired, not bitter. Just stating facts she'd learned over 15 years of rejection. Her phone rang. Her supervisor at Apex Cleaning. "Carmen, I need you to cover Maria's shift tomorrow. She's sick." "I'm already scheduled for double shift, then. We need coverage." Carmen closed her eyes. Another 16-hour day. But she needed the money. "Okay, I'll do it." After hanging up, she looked at the Meridian Tech architectural drawings she'd photographed with her phone. The solution was so clear to her. But speaking up meant risking everything: her job, her income, her dignity. Sophia watched her mother stare at the structural equations on the laptop screen. "Mom, what if you just told them? What if you showed them you could fix their problem?" "Mija, they see a janitor. Even if I speak perfect English, even if I show them my degrees, they see someone who cleans their toilets. That doesn't change because I have knowledge they need." But as Carmen looked at her daughter, brilliant, determined Sophia, who wanted to be a civil engineer herself, she wondered if staying silent was teaching the wrong lesson. The quiet thunder rumbled a little louder. The next morning, Carmen arrived for her double shift at 5:30 a.m. The executive floor was empty except for security. She cleaned methodically, but her mind kept returning to the Beijing project drawings she'd seen. At 7:45 a.m., Marcus Webb arrived looking haggard. He'd clearly been up all night. Behind him came David Park and a woman Carmen recognized from Tech News, Dr. Elena Vega, the seismic design expert. They gathered in the conference room directly adjacent to where Carmen was cleaning the corridor. Through the glass walls, she could see and hear everything. "Dr. Vega, thank you for coming on short notice," Marcus began. Elena Vega was in her 60s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She'd spread the Beijing drawings across the table and was already shaking her head. "Mr. Webb, I'll be direct. This design is fundamentally flawed for Beijing's seismic zone and soil composition. Whoever designed this didn't understand the basic principles of resonance dampening in soft soil high seismic environments. Can you fix it?" "I can redesign it, but not in 6 weeks. This needs a complete foundation rework, new load calculations, modified structural support systems. You're looking at 12 weeks minimum, and that's rushing." Marcus's face fell. "We don't have 12 weeks. Then you don't have a building that will meet Chinese safety codes." "I'm sorry," David interjected. "Dr. Vega, what if we just modified the existing design? Small adjustments to meet minimum requirements." Elena's expression hardened. "Young man, minimum requirements in seismic design means the difference between a building that sways safely during an earthquake and one that collapses and kills people. I don't do small adjustments to inadequate designs. I do it right or not at all." Carmen had stopped cleaning. She stood frozen in the corridor, listening to Dr. Vega articulate exactly what Carmen had identified. The validation of her own analysis was profound, but also frustrating. She knew she could help. But how? The meeting continued for another hour. Marcus grew increasingly desperate, offering more money, faster timelines, anything to make the impossible possible. Elena remained firm. Proper seismic design couldn't be rushed. Finally, Elena stood. "Mr. Webb, I'll send you a proposal for a 12-week redesign. If you want it done faster, find someone else. But I won't compromise structural safety for your business timeline." She left, her heels clicking authoritatively across the marble floor. Marcus slumped in his chair. "We're finished. The Shanghai investors arrive Monday. When they see we can't deliver the Beijing project on time, they'll walk." This was supposed to be our breakthrough into Asian markets. David tried to be optimistic. Maybe we can find another firm. There is no other firm. Elena Vega is the best, and even she says it can't be done. Marcus rubbed his face. 23 years building this company, and we're going to lose it all because of foundation design. Carmen stood in the corridor, her cleaning cat beside her, her heart pounding. This was the moment. Speak up or stay silent. Risk everything or protect the little she had. She thought of Sophia's tuition bill. She thought of 15 years of being invisible. She thought of her research, her knowledge, her expertise that had been locked away because American institutions didn't recognize her worth. The quiet thunder became a roar she could no longer ignore. Carmen set down her cleaning cloth and walked to the conference room door. She knocked softly. Marcus looked up, irritated. Not now. We're in the middle of. Excuse me, Mr. Webb, Carmen said, her accented English clear and professional. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about the Beijing structural design. The cleaning staff doesn't need to be concerned with. I'm not speaking as cleaning staff. I'm speaking as a structural engineer with specialization in seismic design for soft soil environments. The room went silent. Marcus and David stared at her as if she'd announced she was an alien. You're what? Marcus finally managed. A structural engineer. Master's degree from Universidad Nacional de Colombia. I've designed earthquake-resistant buildings in Bogotá, which shares similar seismic challenges to Beijing. I've also published research on resonance dampening in high-rise structures. David recovered first. The janitor is a structural engineer. The janitor has a name. Carmen Reyes. And yes, I'm an engineer. My credentials aren't recognized in the United States due to licensing barriers, but my knowledge remains valid. Marcus leaned back, his expression cycling between disbelief and desperate hope. You're seriously telling me you can solve our Beijing design problem? I'm telling you I've already identified 3 critical flaws in your foundation design and have solutions that would meet Chinese seismic code requirements. Whether you choose to listen to those solutions is your decision. This is insane, David muttered. Marcus, we can't trust our entire Asian expansion to. To what? Carmen interrupted calmly. A Latina immigrant, a cleaning woman, someone without American credentials. She met his eyes steadily. I understand your skepticism, but your building crisis is real, your timeline is impossible, and your options are limited. I'm offering expertise you need. Whether you accept it based on the merit of my knowledge rather than the appearance of my current employment is the actual test here. Marcus and David exchanged glances. The desperation was visible on Marcus's face, warring with prejudice and disbelief. Show me, Marcus said finally. Show me what you think is wrong with the design. Carmen approached the table. Without touching the drawings, she pointed to specific areas. Your foundation depth is calculated for bedrock soil conditions. Beijing's construction site has soft clay composite to at least 15 meters. This creates resonance amplification during seismic events. Your current design would experience harmonic oscillation that exceeds Chinese GB 50011 code specifications by approximately 40%. She pointed to another section. Your load-bearing column placement creates stress concentration points that don't account for lateral wave propagation in soft soil. During a seismic event, these columns would experience shear forces 70% higher than your calculations predict. David had pulled out his tablet and was frantically checking her statements against their design files. His expression shifted from skeptical to shocked. She's right. The soil composition reports we got last week show exactly what she's describing. How did you? Because I've worked with similar conditions in South America. Bogotá's soil composition is remarkably similar to Beijing's in the construction zone. The solutions I developed for buildings in Bogotá's seismic zone would translate directly to your Beijing project. Marcus leaned forward. How long would it take you to redesign the foundation? With access to your full architectural files and structural data. 3 weeks. Elena Vega said 12 weeks minimum. Dr. Vega would redesign everything to her specifications. I don't need to redesign, I need to adapt. Your superstructure design is actually quite good. It's only the foundation and lower-level structural support that requires modification. I can work within your existing framework." David was still checking calculations on his tablet. "Marcus, her analysis of the stress concentration points is consistent with the failure patterns the consulting firm identified. She's not guessing. She actually knows what she's talking about." But Marcus's expression had shifted from hope to suspicion. Why would a structural engineer be working as a janitor? If you have this expertise, why aren't you working for an engineering firm? The question hung in the air, the one Carmen had expected but still stung. Because American licensing boards don't recognize foreign engineering degrees without extensive and expensive recertification. Because engineering firms won't hire someone without U.S. credentials, regardless of experience. Because when you immigrate at 40 with a young daughter to support, you take whatever work you can get. I clean buildings at night and translate technical documents under the table during the day. It pays the bills. It's not my dream, but it's my reality. But you could have pursued recertification. With what money, Mr. Webb? The evaluation process costs $8,000. Then additional coursework, licensing exams, professional reference requirements. We're talking $20,000 minimum and 2 years of process, while supporting my daughter alone. So yes, I could have pursued it, if I'd been willing to let my child go hungry and homeless while I did. The room fell silent again. Marcus stood and walked to the window, thinking. Finally, he turned back. "I want to believe you. God knows I need to believe you. But I can't stake my entire company's future on a leap of faith." "Then don't," Carmen replied. "Give me 1 week. Let me produce a preliminary redesign of your foundation and lower structural supports. If it doesn't meet Chinese seismic codes, if it doesn't solve your problems, you've lost only a week. If it does work, you've gained 3 weeks on your timeline. And what do you want in return?" Carmen thought of Sophia's tuition bill. She thought of 15 years of being invisible. She thought of her research gathering dust. "Pay me for my work as an engineer, not as a janitor. If my redesign works, compensate me fairly for the expertise I'm providing. And if it's successful, provide a letter of recommendation that I can use toward my licensing applications. That's all. No demand for a permanent position, no equity, no. Mr. Webb, I'm not negotiating from a position of power. I'm offering help you need. Fair compensation for fair work. That's all I'm asking." Marcus looked at David. "Your assessment." David was still studying his tablet. "Her analysis is sound. What she's describing is actually more sophisticated than what our consulting firm proposed. I think we should take the chance." 1 week, Marcus decided. "I'll give you access to all our files and data. You'll work from the conference room here where we can monitor progress. If you produce something viable, we'll discuss compensation. If not, we part ways and you return to your regular duties." "Agreed." Carmen extended her hand. "Agreed." As Marcus shook her hand, something flickered in his expression, the realization that he was shaking hands with someone he'd never noticed in 3 years of her cleaning his office. Carmen Reyes, invisible janitor, had just become Carmen Reyes, structural engineer. The quiet thunder had finally been heard. But the real challenge, proving her worth to people determined not to see it, was just beginning. Carmen spent the next 5 days working 16-hour marathons in Meridian's conference room. She'd arrive at 5 a.m., before her regular cleaning shift, and work until 9 p.m., surviving on coffee and her daughter's delivered meals. The architectural software was familiar. She'd used the same programs in Colombia, but accessing years of dormant expertise was like waking sleeping muscles. By day 3, she'd produced preliminary foundation redesigns that made David Park's jaw drop. "Marcus, you need to see this," David said, pulling his boss into the conference room where Carmen had spread 3-dimensional structural models across dual monitors. Carmen walked them through her solution. "I've modified the foundation depth to 18 meters, incorporating floating pile foundations that distribute seismic forces through friction rather than direct bearing. The load-bearing columns now feature base isolation systems, essentially shock absorbers, that reduce seismic stress transfer to the superstructure by 6 to 5%. She rotated the 3D model. The key innovation is this adaptive damping system. Instead of fighting the seismic waves, the foundation flexes with them, dissipating energy through controlled movement. It's a principle I developed in Bogotá for buildings on soft clay soil. Marcus studied the designs. You developed this principle? Yes. It's detailed in my research paper on adaptive seismic response in soft soil environments. Unpublished, because she didn't need to finish the sentence. David was running calculations. The cost increase over the original design is only 12%. That's incredibly efficient. Most seismic retrofits run 30 to 40% over budget. Because I'm working within your existing framework. I'm not redesigning the entire building, just making the foundation intelligent enough to handle the seismic reality. Over the next 2 days, Carmen refined the design while Marcus brought in external consultants to verify her work. Dr. Elena Vega returned, skeptical at first, then increasingly impressed as she reviewed Carmen's calculations. This is exceptional work, Elena admitted, studying the adaptive damping system. The theoretical framework is sound, the mathematics are elegant, and the implementation is practical. Who did you say designed this? Carmen Reyes, Marcus replied, gesturing to where Carmen sat at the conference table. Elena looked at Carmen properly for the first time. Really looked, not just saw a woman in a cleaning uniform. You designed this. Your background? Masters in Structural Engineering, Universidad Nacional de Colombia. 15 years of practical experience, mostly in seismic-prone environments. Currently working as a janitor because U.S. licensing boards don't recognize my credentials. Elena's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, recognition, and finally, something like shame. Ms. Reyes, I owe you an apology. When I was here before, I saw you cleaning and didn't think twice. I made assumptions about who could and couldn't contribute to this conversation. Most people do, Carmen replied without bitterness. The uniform is very good camouflage for competence. Elena turned to Marcus. Mr. Webb, this design exceeds what I would have proposed. It's more innovative, more cost-effective, and actually demonstrates principles I've only seen in theoretical literature. If you don't hire Ms. Reyes permanently, you're a fool. By day 7, Carmen had produced a complete foundation redesign, structural calculations, material specifications, and construction timeline. The Shanghai investors were due Monday morning. Marcus called an emergency executive meeting. Carmen was invited, her first time in the room as a participant rather than a cleaner. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, I want to introduce Carmen Reyes, the structural engineer who solved our Beijing project crisis. Around the table, executives shifted uncomfortably. Several had walked past Carmen for years without acknowledgement. Now they were being asked to accept her as a peer. Carmen will present her design to the Shanghai investors Monday morning. David will handle the business aspects, but Carmen will field all technical questions. Marcus, interrupted the CFO, Patricia Chen, with respect, is it wise to present our Asian expansion project through someone without recognized credentials? The optics, Carmen interrupted calmly, are that Meridian Tech has an engineer brilliant enough to solve in 1 week what major consulting firms said was impossible. Whether that engineer learned her trade in Colombia or California is irrelevant to the quality of the design. Patricia pressed on. But the investors might question. Then let them question, Marcus cut in, his voice firm. Carmen's work speaks for itself. If the Shanghai investors are more concerned with credentials than results, they are not the partners we need. Monday morning arrived with the weight of consequence. The Shanghai Investment Group, 4 men in expensive suits led by CEO Zhong Wei, filled Meridian's main conference room. Carmen stood at the presentation screen, wearing professional clothes Sophia had helped her choose, her hair pulled back, looking every bit the engineer she'd always been. She presented in flawless English, with technical precision that transcended language barriers. the adaptive damping system, the floating pile foundations, the seismic response calculations. She answered every technical question with confidence born from genuine expertise. Zhong Wei listened intently, occasionally conferring with his team in Mandarin. Carmen caught fragments of their discussion. She'd learned basic Mandarin years ago for a project in Colombia. Finally, Zhong Wei spoke directly to Carmen. Ms. Reyes, your design is impressive. But I must ask, what assurances can you provide that this will meet Chinese construction standards? I've designed it to exceed GB 500-11-2010 seismic code specifications by 18%. I've also incorporated redundancies based on China's updated 2021 seismic design guidelines. Your own structural engineers can verify every calculation. Zhong Wei nodded slowly, then said something in Mandarin to his team that Carmen understood. She actually knows what she's talking about, not just following Western templates. He switched back to English. Mr. Webb, we are prepared to move forward with the Beijing project, with one condition. Name it, Marcus replied. We want Ms. Reyes to serve as the structural consultant for the entire project, not your original firm. Huh? The room erupted in shocked whispers. Consider it done, Marcus said, extending his hand to Zhong Wei. After the Shanghai delegation left, excited, impressed, and committed to a now expanded $40 million investment, Marcus pulled Carmen aside. You saved this company. You know that. I solved a structural engineering problem. That's what engineers do. No, you did more than that. You showed all of us, how blind we'd been. He paused. Carmen, I want to offer you a position as senior structural engineer, full-time, with competitive salary and benefits. I also want to fund your U.S. licensing certification process completely. And I'm commissioning a publication of your adaptive seismic design research through MIT Press, with full credit and compensation. Carmen felt tears threatening but kept her voice steady. Thank you, Mr. Webb. I accept. As she left the building that evening, no longer pushing a cleaning cat, but carrying a Meridian Tech employee badge with senior engineer printed beneath her name, Carmen called Sophia. Mija, I have good news about tuition. And about everything else. Sophia's excited scream carried through the phone. Mom, tell me everything. I'll tell you at home. But Sophia, remember this moment. Remember that your knowledge has value, even when the system doesn't recognize it. Remember that being underestimated isn't the same as being inadequate. And remember that sometimes, the quiet thunder just needs the right moment to strike. 3 months later, Carmen stood in front of the Meridian Tech Board of Directors presenting her Hidden Talent Initiative. When Marcus hired me as an engineer, it revealed an uncomfortable truth about our company and about corporate America generally. We had expertise walking our halls for years that we never recognized because we didn't look beyond job titles and appearances. She advanced the presentation. In partnership with HR, I've conducted a voluntary survey of all Meridian support staff, custodians, food service, administrative assistants, security. The results are troubling and enlightening. The slide showed statistics. 27% held bachelor's degrees or higher. 14% had advanced technical training. 8% had professional credentials from other countries. All were working in positions below their qualification levels. Most are immigrants whose credentials aren't recognized. Some faced age discrimination. Others struggled with language barriers or lacked professional networks. All represent untapped potential. She clicked to the next slide showing her proposal, credential evaluation funding, skills assessment programs, internal mobility initiatives, and partnerships with licensing boards. The cost of this program is approximately $400,000 annually. The potential return, measured in innovation, diversity of thought, and employee loyalty, is incalculable. The board approved it unanimously. Within 6 months, 5 Meridian support staff members had transitioned to professional roles. Within a year, 12 had completed credential recognition processes. The initiative had attracted attention from other tech companies, media outlets, and professional organizations. Carmen became a speaker at engineering conferences, not just about seismic design, but about systemic barriers and hidden talent. Her research on adaptive seismic response was published by MIT Press and became required reading in structural engineering programs. Most importantly, Sophia graduated from Seattle University with a civil engineering degree and immediately joined Meridian's structural engineering team, working alongside her mother on projects across Asia. 1 year after the Beijing project, Carmen returned to the executive floor where she'd once pushed a cleaning cart. This time, she came as the newly appointed Director of Structural Innovation, with her own corner office and a team of 12 engineers. She stood at the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline, thinking about the building beneath her feet, the one designed using principles she'd pioneered, the one she'd cleaned for years without anyone knowing she'd helped create it. Marcus found her there. "Carmen, the Beijing tower broke ground this morning. Zhong Wei sent photos. He wants you there for the opening ceremony next year. I'll be honored to attend." Marcus hesitated. "I've been thinking a lot about the 3 years you cleaned these offices. All that expertise, all that knowledge, and we never saw it. We never asked. We just assumed. Most people do. How many other Carmens are out there? How much brilliance are we wasting because we judge by job titles instead of capability? Thousands. Maybe millions." Carmen turned to face him. "But it's changing. Slowly. One initiative at a time. One person willing to look beyond the uniform." She smiled. "The quiet thunder is getting louder."